Hello, welcome to this second video tutorial. Today we will learn how to create Matlab scripts and functions. So we will learn the very basics from Matlab programming. Remember from the previous video lecture that each time we start the software, we must make sure the current folder is the one where we want to work. So today I'm going to create a new folder where I want to work, maybe on my desktop, and I will create a folder named Matlab Introduction. It's very important that you cannot use in Matlab name of folders spaces, neither accents or strange characters. So either you can name it like this, or maybe use an underbar, that's also allowed. Okay, so today I'm going to work in this folder, and the files will appear here. So the simplest type of Matlab program is called a script. So first thing we are going to do is to create a new script, pressing this button here. This brings the editor out, the Matlab Editor, and in script you can just write down commands exactly as you would type at the command window. The only difference is that when you write it in the editor, they are not already executed, they are just typed there, and if you want to run them, you need to either press this button, which saves and runs the file, for example. We can give a name to this main example, and then it will run the file. Another way to run the script is to type on the command window the name of the file. So this file is called main example, which is already in our current folder. So we can just write here main example, and it will execute. And finally, something that is quite useful is that you can run some parts of the code. Maybe I just want to run this line. So I just select this line, and with the right click of the mouse, I select Evaluate Selection. So this will run only the selected line, okay? So this is a script. It's just commands like you will write down in the command window, and they are sequentially executed. Now, these are the simplest Matlab programs that are called scripts. Now we will move to functions. Functions they are a group of statements that together perform a task. So what is important in a function is that they take in data, some input variables, they compute with those input variables, and finally they return a result. They return some output variables. So here, if we create a new function, we will see that always the first line must start with the word function. Between these brackets, we will write down the output variables, then an equal sign, the name of the function that should be descriptive of what it does, and finally, between parentheses, the name of the input variables. Okay? Now, here you can write some comments using the % symbol. And what you write here should be a summary of what the function does and who are the input and the output variables. So let's do an example. Let's say I want to define a function that computes the roots of a quadratic equation. Okay, so in this case, I would write here that the output variables are x1 and x2. The name of the function can be, for example, quadratic. And the input variables should be the coefficients a, b, and c of my quadratic equation. Here I will write down what this function does. In this case, this is a function that returns the roots of the quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay? It's important to explain who are the input variables and who are the output variables. So in this case, the input variables are a, which is the coefficient of the x squared term, b, which is the coefficient of the linear term, and c, which is the constant term. And the output variables in this case are x1, which is the, in this case, first computed root, and x2, which is going to be the second computed root. It's very important to write down these comments, because if another person wants to use the function, just reading this information should be enough to use the function. Okay, and also it's important for you after a time just to refresh your memory on what was this function doing. So just reading this information should be clear enough to understand what the function does. Okay, now we will save the function. It's very important that the name of the file should be the same as the name of the function. So when I do here save as, Matlab is telling me maybe you want to save it as quadratic because that's the name of the function. Yeah, that's what I want. It must have the same name. And now I should write down the code. I will compute the discriminant first, which is the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. I will write down a semicolon because I don't want that to show on the screen. Okay? It's very usual when you program to always end your lines with a semicolon. Then I will compute the first root. That's going to be minus b plus d divided by 2 times a. And the second root would be something pretty similar, but with a minus there, yeah? So these are the two, sorry, x2. Okay? So x1 and x2 are the output variables. x1 and x2 are already defined in my code. And it's very important that functions operate on variables on their own workspace. So this is separated from the workspace you access at the Matlab common window. Variables that are specified in a function, like for example, this variable called d, are local functions inside this function here, local variables, and they will not appear in the workspace. So let me show you that. I will call now this function from the common window. Of course, I have to give values to these variables. For example, 1, 0, 0. And I can see here that, of course, the solution of x squared equals 0 is 0, both roots. And I can see that x1 and x2 appear in the workspace because they are the output variables, but d doesn't appear here because d is a local variable. It's only defined inside the function, but when the code leaves the function, these variables are removed. Okay? They are just used inside the function. The way to call a function is only as you define it using this format. You can either call it from the common window or from a script file. For example, from this script file, I can call a function. just in this case, I will call the quadratic function using a, b, and c already defined previously in the script. So I can run this, and I will compute the roots. In this case are complex roots, okay, of this quadratic equation. It's very important that functions cannot be run pressing the run button. If I do that, I will get an error because functions need input variables to be given, to have given values. You cannot just press this button. This is just for scripts. For functions, the only way to call them is using this call, this format, either from the command window, either from script file. Okay? So that's all I wanted to explain today. It's a very important concept, the function. There are self functions from Matlab. For example, the function sqrt is already a function that is defined in Matlab. Today, we defined our functions, quadratic.m, and we call it from a main file, from a script file, main example. Okay, so that's it. In the next video, we will review loops and conditional statements so we can go further into programming. See you there. Bye-bye.